breaking news on Twitter. Multiple sources, reliable sources, indicate that a resolution on an ongoing debt ceiling crisis is just around the corner. This is important context to this video, which we also will kind of infuse some caution into the Bitcoin charts because it's there. Before we dive into those charts, I want you to take a listen to this clip from this Twitter space in relation to the debt ceiling. This is kind of breaking news.
I've also confirmed now with one additional person who did also speak to somebody in on one side of the party, and it seems like the debt ceiling deal is now imminent. A handshake deal essentially occurred last night.
So this is, I don't think 100% confirmed, but there's a couple of things happening right now. I just saw this, and this wasn't posted that long ago. This was a couple hours ago on Twitter. We have headlines like this: Dow jumps 300 points as Wall Street grows hopeful that a debt ceiling deal can be reached. What do people out there know? You know what I'm saying? The people at the front lines, what do they know, and how is that rumor spreading to different levels before it's just out in the news and headlines? That's kind of the question as we look at S&P 500 chart. This is the daily chart, this daily green candle. Markets are moving. There's that short-term hopium being infused into these markets right now, and it is translating over to Bitcoin on the short term. Now, in even the thumbnail of this video, I have a little thing, something about caution, because there's things we should really be on the lookout for. I really think so, and that's what I want to break down in this video. So as we're kind of shifting from bear market to bull market, we have so many things happening, even in the short term, things like this debt ceiling deal and the way that moves the volatility of markets. We have this is trueflation. Everybody, look at this. 2.86% inflation continuing to fall according to on-chain metrics. Trueflation, I can't say this enough, throughout this entire bear market that we've been in, just the inflation issues. This has been such an amazing leading indicator for just what is going on in terms of inflation data, CPI data. So if this is true and it's truly falling like this, there could be more things kind of from a data point perspective as it relates to the actual CPI data that comes out over here that we've been tracking on this, US inflation calculator website. There could be more good news on the way, right? So we have to take all of those things into account. Now we dive into the Bitcoin technical analysis of it all and talk about, well, what's next and why to use caution, where to use caution. So this is the Bitcoin weekly. First things first, Bitcoin, you can just see exiting the bear market, and it's too nice looking to see this bounce of support at these moving averages. This is a 20-week moving average, a 200-week moving average, obviously the 50-week moving average all the way down here. So it's so nice to see. It would be amazing just to see even just sideways and then up, or just a bounce up. But I think there are things in play from a data perspective that, from my perspective, allow me to embrace the fact that we could see a higher low on the macro before the real bulls step in. I just always kind of entertain that thought. It's a very important exercise for me to utilize that caution, especially when there's data from a technical analysis perspective that suggests we could have a very similar move that we had in 2019. Just this kind of fall, a higher low on the macro before the bull market. And even then, you can see it falling below that 20-week moving average. We didn't get the perfect bounce of support for continuation. So there's no reason why we can assume, man, all this support right here, we're going to get that continuation right now. It could happen. It would be amazing. That would be Bitcoin from a cycle perspective, diverging in a way that is never done before. So we'll track that, but we start zooming in on the daily, and then we start getting the sense of, okay, there could be downside, like we just discussed on that macro weekly. But on the shorter term, even a daily chart, we might get a pop to the upside first. And this is what we're looking for. We have this MACD. This has been in the red on this histogram this is since mid-April. This is almost a month and a half. This is a long time on this daily chart. And we've been tracking it, right? These fake outs that actually kind of keep happening. Looks like it's about to go green on the histogram. Like a nice breakout is what we would see on that, right? Doesn't go green, comes back down. Looks like it's going to go green again. Doesn't go green, comes back down. Looks like it's going to go green again. Doesn't go green, comes back down. And right now, we're in another move. And we're going to look at the short-term Bitcoin chart to get a sense of what can happen to really get this powerful move. first things first, rejection on the MACD at the signal line. And right now we're getting a potential test of that MACD to cross the signal line once again. The fake outs on this MACD momentum oscillator are insane. So here we are. This is Bitcoin on the daily chart. This is where the caution comes into play. It's great to see on the short-term headlines this debt ceiling deal reached, right? But I think it's nice to step out and say, tomorrow there might, say the news breaks today, and it might be breaking now, I don't know. Debt ceiling reached, good news. Tomorrow there could be some bad news, right? That plays right into the resistance that's ahead for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin starts falling again. That's something to consider. We can also look at the resistance areas and say, maybe there'll be bullish confirmation and a breakout, a shattering of the resistance, but we're not there yet, right? So this is short-term news, and we have to be mindful of the fact that what's next week headlines going to be like? And how does that play into the resistance that is ahead for Bitcoin if Bitcoin even gets to the resistance area? So these are things that I'm considering. It's nice to see potential good news on the short term, but remember what's happening on the long term and remember what is in play. This is my approach, and this is kind of how I'm looking at the charts. So here's the 6 hour. You get a sense of it. We know what has happened on, and we're going to talk about resistance in just a minute. We know what has happened on this symmetrical triangle. Bitcoin broke to the downside, and it's just been resistance at the lower trend line since, right? And even then, we just put in a short-term kind of double bottom from this bottom back here on the short-term 6 hour. And this is like a couple of weeks ago. So Bitcoin bouncing out of that short-term area. You can see even on this very short-term chart, there's this momentum swing to the upside. We have even on the RSI, this kind of resistance line, a ton of resistance on the 6 hour, on the daily. And this is what it looks like on the daily, because this is more major resistance. 20-day moving average, the obvious one, right? Bitcoin fell below it all the way back here. And this was right when the 20-day was breaking below the 50-day, that blue line. And you can just see Bitcoin fell below it. It had resistance at the lower trend line of the symmetrical triangle, and it had resistance, confluent resistance at the 20-day moving average. That 20-day moving average could continue to be lower high resistance. Bitcoin keeps falling. That's that first confirmation area. Can Bitcoin even break above the 20-day moving average? It's the first thing we want to see. But there's all this convergence happening with this consolidation for Bitcoin. So 20-day moving average around 27,000. The lower trend line of the symmetrical triangle, 27,600, right? So only $600 above. And you can just see, this is just that picture perfect kind of pullback scenario where we wait for the pullback to the trend line to see if the resistance can be broken. And maybe this could turn into a busted triangle, meaning bearish break, but a false break to the downside, doesn't hit the target of 24, and actually breaks right back up and through to the upside to follow into the direction of a bullish target to the upside. But there's a lot of resistance for that to happen. So the 20-day moving average, the lower trend line, and then just very simply the entire apex of the triangle. It's normal. I mean, doesn't happen all the time, but this is normal to see Bitcoin getting close to the apex, right? Breaking a certain direction and then pulling back into truly the end of the apex for some type of support or resistance. If it was a break to the upside, we'd be looking for support. Break to the downside, we're looking for resistance. What does Bitcoin do there? That is that bullish confirmation that I'd be looking for that could really translate onto the zoomed out charts and kind of allow us to say, man, Bitcoin actually might be bouncing off these support areas and might actually continue this uptrend on this macro chart. But this is kind of an hourly thing right now, especially as we have news coming out in the short term. We have to evaluate what's going on in terms of S&P 500 and the stock market and all that good stuff and how that kind of translates onto the Bitcoin charts. But this is where we are. It's a short-term breakout moment for Bitcoin, but it's a moment nonetheless, right? It's a moment for Bitcoin to test resistance, to see if there's any power behind the Bitcoin momentum for Bitcoin to kind of turn this shorter term, midterm trend around. And what I mean by that is the swing high that we had in mid-April to this downtrend that we've fallen into. Can that shift happen? And it all happens at this resistance right now. It's either going to be a lower high, continue down to a $24,000 target, or Bitcoin's going to break back above these resistance levels on the short term. And this is what I'm watching on the short term. So be very interesting. I mean, even as I'm doing this video, I really wonder if as I'm doing this video or uploading or how soon this news might break, if it's even true, right? So let's just keep evaluating. Let's just keep watching. Let me know your thoughts, how you're doing out there, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Hit the subscribe, hit the like. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.